Thanks everyone for being here. As Justin said, I'm Karen Viskupic. I'm at Boise State University, and I wanted to acknowledge my longtime collaborator, Ann Egger, who has been working on all of these things with me. Let's see. So a little bit more about me. I'm a geologist. All of my training and degrees are in geology, but when I finished my PhD, which was in tectonics and geochemistry, I was really more excited to focus on geoscience education. So over the next many years, I retrained myself to do education research, and now I'm part of a community of discipline-based education researchers. And as Justin said, my research generally falls under the umbrella of student success in the geosciences. And lately, what that includes is thinking about career awareness and skill development at the program and community scale, and also the impact of teaching practices on student learning and motivation. So these are just some photos from both my science life and my non-science life. I have a dog. I have a son who's almost 20, but I love that photo of him, and he no longer really poses for geoscience photos for me. And I recently learned how to knit. And so I also spend a lot of time knitting. And there's a photo there of a climate change scarf that I made for my colleague, Dr. Jen Pierce. So I wanted to, in addition to acknowledging Anne as a collaborator, I also wanted to say thank you and acknowledge the work of two of my graduate students, Greg Schaefer and Kaylin Lagerwal. They both just graduated in December. I'm really proud of their work, and I'll be sharing some of that today. Okay, so despite talking about workforce preparation in this webinar, I don't think that the purpose of a college education is just to train students for jobs. There are lots of reasons to go to college and have different educational experiences, but most of our students will need to and will want to have jobs. And so I want students to be prepared and successful in those jobs. And the planet needs a well-trained geoscience workforce. I think that's a safe thing to say. And so this talk will focus mostly on undergraduate students. Most of my research has been about undergraduate students so far entering the workforce, but the same ideas really apply to preparation for entering graduate schools and also to students in graduate programs. A lot of the skills and dispositions that are desired in the workforce really cut across educational levels. Okay, so just some background about the geoscience workforce. So bachelor-level geoscientists actually represent the majority of the current geoscience workforce, and positions for bachelor-level geoscientists are forecast to increase by 5 to 10% over the next decade. I think we all recognize that we need to do a better job attracting and supporting students in the geoscience. So geoscience is one of the least diverse STEM fields, and if we want to have a robust and powerful workforce, we need to expand who is able to be successful in our programs. Students and faculty, I think, have relatively little awareness of what career opportunities exist in the geosciences, and of what skills and abilities are needed in the geoscience workforce. These are some student quotes from the end of a geoscience career planning course that I teach at Boise State. And these are just some examples that I think illustrate, these are, talking about their experiences in the course. Students generally don't know what careers are available to them. And having a better understanding of the possibilities of jobs, of careers in geoscience increases student motivation and confidence that they have found a place where they can be successful. So the kind of arc of this talk will be, thinking about how we can help prepare students for success in the workforce. And so I think that involves three things. One is we need to understand what the landscape of career opportunities are and what skills are desired in the workforce. We need to think about what learning opportunities we're providing for students that help them to develop those skills that they'll need, and then make adjustments as needed. And then we also need to help students to reflect and plan. So students need to recognize and claim and be able to communicate the skills and the dispositions that they've developed as part of their both curricular and co-curricular experiences. Okay, so what skills do geoscientists need? So the Vision and Change report that was published by AGI a few years ago now has a pretty comprehensive list of skills that are desired in the workforce. This list of skills was generated from a survey and from some workshops with employers. The survey was largely filled out by academics. There are some employers as well. And I guess I would say that the number of employer voices in this work was maybe not as expansive as it could have been. Um, uh, that's not to say it's not valuable, it's super valuable. And also there's a really long list of skills and thinking about, well, which of those skills are most important in what type of jobs, what might I focus on? That's something that doesn't quite come out in this report. So my colleagues and I took just a different approach to trying to think about what skills do geoscientists need, and that was to collect job advertisements for entry-level geoscientists from 4 different online search engines, including USA Jobs, which would be all federal jobs. So we collected advertisements over the period of 1 year. And they needed to require or request a geoscience-related bachelor's degree and minimal experience. So that was over 3,600 unique ads from over 1,000 different employers. And then we, categorize those job ads. So what are the job titles? What industries are those advertisements associated with? And then also looked at what are the skills that are being requested in those job advertisements. So this pie chart is just showing the distribution of those ads by industry sector. So a lot of jobs in the federal government, environmental services, state and local government, and so on. The point here is really that geoscientists are employed in a lot of different industries, and they have many different job titles. And these are things that students are probably not aware of. Okay, so Greg Schaefer, who just finished his PhD, developed a code to analyze and look for what are the skills that are being requested in these job advertisements. And so this table is showing the most frequently requested skills in the most common occupations in that data set. So at the top of the list, written communication, field skills, data collection, oral communication, and so on. So this is just counting, was a skill present in a job ad or not? So the percentage of ads that included each of these different skills. We can also look at the number of times each skill is mentioned within a single ad. So looking not just, is the skill there, yes or no, but how frequently is it showing up in ads? And so that is shown in this graph here. So let's see, what you're looking at is along the horizontal axis, the total number of ads in which a skill was found. And then on the vertical axis is the total number of occurrences of that skill within the entire set of job advertisements. So the black line that you see across the graph, I guess I can use my pointer here, is a one-to-one line. So if each skill was mentioned one time in the ads in which they were found, the symbols would fall along that line. So what you see is many of them fall above the line, showing that these skills are mentioned multiple times within an ad. Our assumption was that if a skill is mentioned repeatedly within an ad, that it's something that's very important to that job. What you see is that field skills is way, way, way above that one-to-one line. So any jobs that included field skills are usually talking about a lot of different field skills that are needed. Also, I made a note on the left here, 29% of the ads mentioned dispositions, so things like professionalism, desire to learn, integrity, intention to detail. I'll come back to that idea a little bit later in the talk, but wanted to point that out. So almost 30% of ads are mentioning dispositions. So these are all of the skills requested in the job ads. And then this is a breakdown of field skills specifically. So Greg went back and looked at any of the ads that included field skills. What does that mean? You know, that means something different depending on what subdiscipline you're involved in, maybe. So this is a breakdown of the different types of field skills that were requested in those job advertisements. So unspecified field skills just means there's some indication in the advertisement that you would be expected to do field work, but it's not clear what kind. So a lot of site assessment and evaluation, monitoring, sampling of different kinds, and so on. Greg also went back and did a further breakdown of what kind of computer skills were requested. So in the initial coding, it was just what, computer skills there or not. And then he went down and broke that up into kind of basic computer skills, things like using email, using word processing software, Excel, specialized software like ArcGIS, and then coding languages, MATLAB, Python, R, and so on. And so you can see that 30% of the ads mentioned something about basic computer skills. Coding was mentioned in far fewer ads, but still there. Okay, so as a follow-up to this analysis of job advertisements, Greg conducted interviews with 16 employers. So these are people who are responsible for interviewing and hiring decisions for entry-level geoscientists from a variety of industry sectors. So this table is showing who are the types of people that were included in these interviews. And the focus of the interviews was really to answer the questions shown here. So what are the skills that employers are thinking are most valuable when they're making hiring decisions? How are employers assessing applicants? And how do employers find and attract applicants? And so these data are currently in review in the Journal of Geoscience Education, and hopefully will be out later this year, maybe. Okay, so the results of those interviews, these are kind of 3 highlights from those interviews. One, written communication is really important. So every participant interviewed, all 16, emphasized the importance of written communication skills. They also emphasize field skills. So 10 of the 16 participants interviewed talked about collecting data in field settings. And then 12 of the 16 people interviewed talked about disposition. So things like desire to learn, professionalism were talked about as being important. And so if you remember, only 29% of ads said anything about dispositions, but as part of the interview and hiring process, it seems like these dispositions are really important. Okay, so we know a little something about what skills are needed in the entry-level geoscience workforce, both skills and dispositions. We want to think about, well, are students actually gaining these skills? I think mostly about a geoscience program, a degree program, because that's what I'm involved in. But certainly if you are supervising interns or working with students over the summer or on special projects, I think you can go through the same kinds of thought process. But most of what I'll talk about is courses, but you can think about courses in whatever context makes sense for you. That might not be a course, it might be something else. So to think about how the geosciences community as a whole is doing in helping to prepare students gain these skills and enter the workforce successfully, we looked at results from the 2016 National Geoscience Faculty Survey. which was emailed to over 10,000 geoscience instructors. Instructors who fill out the survey answer questions about a specific course that they teach. So I looked at survey responses that came from instructors who filled out the survey with respect to a majors level course that they are teaching. So geophysics, geochemistry, structural geology, earth materials, things like that. And so people filling out the survey answered questions about, there are some questions on the survey that I can map onto relevant workforce skills. So for example, field skills, written communication, oral communication, math skills. Okay, so we had over 1,000 responses for majors level courses. I mapped those responses, I binned them by class type, and mapped them onto desired workforce skills. Okay, so this is some results of that work. These were published in the Journal of Geoscience Education a few years ago. And so what is shown here is kind of a heat map. So we have courses, each different course type is shown in a column, and then each row is a different geoscience skill. And then the percentage of respondents from each of those course types who said, yes, students are practicing that skill in my course. So for example, 100% of instructors who responded to the survey and were about a sedimentation and stratigraphy class that they taught said, yes, students are distinguishing observations from interpretation. And 96% of them reported asking students to work as part of a team. Okay, so the shading in this figure is something of a heat map with the darker colors indicating higher percentage of yes responses. Yes, students are practicing these skills. So this is the top half of this diagram, and the skills are color-coded. So orange is data skills, blue are kind of geoscience specific skills, yellow communication skills, green systems thinking, and red is societal relevance. So this is the top half of that figure, and then this is the bottom half. So things that are practiced less frequently in our geoscience classes. So this, I hope, is useful to instructors in thinking about, okay, this is the type of class that I teach. Which of these skills am I practicing in my class? How does that compare to what instructors nationwide are doing? We might look for places where a skill that we're particularly interested in is being practiced regularly and reach out to that community to find out more about what they're doing. So I see this as something of a reflective tool for instructors. From those data, so we combined those responses with about 70 example undergraduate program profiles. So what are the courses that students are required or expected to take as part of an undergraduate degree program, and made a model to simulate how many times students would be likely to practice each of these skills in geoscience programs and kind of an aggregate or average geoscience program. So this was a Bayesian model of student experiences. And so the graphs here are showing the modeled number of times or number of exposures that students would be likely to have in an undergraduate degree program for each of the different skills. And so again, orange are data skills, blue are geoscience skills. And what I hope you'll see from this is that students are practicing these skills many times over the course of a degree program, right? So 6 times, 9 times, multiple times over the course of a set of classes they're likely to take. So this is half of the data here, and then the other half here. So these are things that are practiced less frequently. But some of these skills, I'd say, are broken up at a pretty fine scale. So if we sum together all of the societal relevance and all of the systems thinking examples, we might say, well, even though each of these individual things is practiced a few number of times, if we look at them in aggregate, students are practicing these skills many times over the course of their programs. Okay, so summary so far. There are lots of different jobs for bachelor-level geoscientists in many different types of industries. We have an idea of what skills students need to enter those jobs. And nationally, the geoscience community is providing lots of opportunities for students to develop those skills in the courses that they're likely to take as part of their undergraduate degree programs. But what do students know about that? Are students aware of these skills? Are students aware of these career opportunities? So I want to think now about how we can do a better job of making workforce skills and opportunities visible to students. And so Anne Egger and I put together this new collection of resources in Teach the Earth. So if you're familiar with the Teach the Earth site, you can type in workforce skills, which will get you to this Building Geoscience Workforce Skills website, or I've included a QR code, which should take you there as well. Okay, so this new collection of resources has 4 parts. So getting started is some background knowledge about workforce skills and opportunities. I should back up and say this collection is intended for instructors and people who are working with and mentoring students to get background information that they need and think about strategies that they can use to help support workforce development. So getting started is background information. There's a large section about different strategies that might be helpful for instructors to use. Activities is a work in progress, and at the end I will talk about ways that you could help to contribute things to that collection, and then getting more help. So I will go through some of the content in this web collection. So the Getting Started has background about getting to know the geoscience workforce. And that includes some of the studies that I already talked about in this webinar from Greg Schaefer's analysis of job advertisements. And that is published in Geosphere in 2023, if anyone wants to read that paper and look at things in more detail. So some background about skills needed in the geoscience workforce and where geoscientists are employed. Some information about professional licensure and links to additional information so that you can find out about professional licensure requirements in your own state. So this is also part of that information about professional licensure and thinking about the fundamentals of geology exam and the content of that exam and how it aligns with what might be going on in your program. There's also some information about agency requirements. So some federal agencies on their websites have information about specific job titles and what the expectations or degree and course requirements are to be hired into those positions. So these are just some examples from the BLM and the USGS. And again, so I'm going through this kind of quickly, but this is just all of this content is in the website where you can peruse it at your leisure, but just giving you an idea of the types of things that are included in that web collection. Some ideas for getting to know your alumni. So students in different places might have different expectations or needs. So thinking about what students in your particular context are interested in doing is important. And then also links to a bunch of resources from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay, so I want to spend most of the time here talking about this strategies section of this web resource. So Anne and I organized the strategies into three types. So strategies that are related to building students' awareness of geoscience jobs and careers, strategies for helping you to connect to workforce skills in courses, research experiences, and whatever your interactions with students are like. And also then strategies that are related to helping students reflect on, prepare for, and communicate their workforce readiness. And so each of the things here is a different strategy that's described on the website. So each strategy includes an overview, and a brief example of what that might look like, some reasons why you might use that strategy, tips for success, and then links to resources for more information. So I wanted to just highlight or give some examples of what those strategies might look like. So I will share 2 examples from each of these different strategy categories. So the first one is sharing career profiles. So this is a strategy for building students' awareness of geoscience careers and jobs. So you might create a series of alumni profiles from your program or from your institution. There are many examples of this on different agency websites. So the USGS has a career exploration page. The GROW website has compiled a list of links to many different career resources from different professional societies. I know that there are career profiles that are included in the EarthScope now I'm forgetting the name, but it comes up in a slide later, the asynchronous web-based course that students can take. So this is just a way to help students see what the possibilities are. Another strategy for building students' career awareness is to ask everybody to share something about their career path. So if you have a seminar or a guest speaker that comes to your class, you can ask visitors to prepare a slide or a brief description of what they do in their job and what their career path is like. When I was organizing the seminar here at Boise State a few semesters ago, I did that, and speakers were really happy to do that, and students responded well to that. Getting a sense of how do these people end up where they are. And I tried to model that a bit at the beginning of this talk as well. If that doesn't happen in your seminar, you might be the person in the audience who asks at the end, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about your career path or how you got to where you are? Okay, so those are some strategies, 2 of the strategies for building students' career awareness. Next, I'll give examples of 2 strategies for connecting to skills in your courses or co-curricular experiences. The first one is to incorporate skills and dispositions into your learning outcomes. So explicitly naming the skills that students are developing as part of an assignment that you give them, or a class project, or a research experience. Naming those skills and talking about the value of those skills is important. So the example that I'm showing here on the slide is from the Transparency in Learning and Teaching project, or TILT project. They have an assignment template that I really love. I've used this in all my courses now. And it asks instructors as part of the assignment to explicitly call out what's the purpose of this assignment and what are the knowledge and skills that you are going to gain by completing this assignment. So this is an example of an activity that I modified from SAGE, so exploring rates of earthquake occurrence. I use this in my intro classes and call out what knowledge and skills students are expected to gain as part of doing that activity. We do this in class. Okay. So that's an example at an assignment scale. If you're thinking about a whole program, whether that's a degree program or like a research experiences for undergraduates over the summer, or an internship program, you might think about particular skills and where and how students are practicing those skills across many different courses or experiences. So this is an example matrix for looking at where different types of communication skills are practiced in a geoscience program across several different courses. So note that not all skills and dispositions need to be practiced in every class. You need to think about, of course, what makes sense in the context for your teaching or for the experience. You can think about trying to coordinate with colleagues. And again, explicitly connecting to these skills, naming them, talking about them is important for students to recognize, 1, that they're valuable, and 2, that they're actually gaining them, so that they can communicate that in a cover letter, in a resume, and as part of an interview. Okay. Next, in that third category of strategies are strategies for helping students reflect, plan, and communicate their workforce readiness. So one example is to use reflection prompts. And I've shown two example contexts for that here. One might be thinking back to using career profiles. So if that's maybe you have video interviews with alumni, or you have a career panel where you ask students to go look at some of the web-based career profiles. You might ask them to reflect on what they learned and what they heard. So how did interacting with those career profiles help you decide what you'd like to do after graduation, or think about how you're going to go through your remaining time in the program, what types of experiences might be valuable to you or important for you to gain to help you develop the skills that you'll need. On the right is an example reflection prompt that might come at the end of an assignment or a project or a research experience, asking students to reflect on what dispositions they think that they developed as part of that project or assignment, and so on. So choose two of the following dispositions and describe how you developed or used them in this work. And then I've listed several dispositions that might apply to the work that students have done. Okay, and then finally, another strategy for helping students to reflect and plan and communicate is to offer a career planning course or workshop series. So I teach a 1-credit career planning and exploration class at Boise State. It has been elective for the past 5 years, I guess, but starting in the fall, it will be required for all students. I showed some quotes from this course at the beginning of the webinar about students' experiences. So this is something that I do at Boise State. If you don't want to do that, or you don't have somebody in your department that wants to do that, that's okay. There are lots of other resources available, including this EarthScope Unearth Your Future asynchronous short course, which is web-based. So this is something that you might ask students to sign up for, maybe complete the whole thing, maybe complete just certain modules within that course. It's a really rich resource. I went through it as a student. There's so much information. There's also student quotes and responses to the modules that are built into the course. One of my favorites was this geophysicists do a lot. I thought that was great. Okay, there are videos embedded in that. Again, it's a really rich resource, I think, both for instructors and for students. So thinking about workforce readiness. Okay, so this web resource includes background information, a whole bunch of different strategies for different things. And then we're also working on building a collection of activities. I'm on sabbatical this semester, and one of my goals is to put all of the activities from my career planning class into this collection. But of course, lots of other people are doing great things as well. So if you have an activity or an assignment, something that you are doing with students that is connected to workforce skills, please contribute that to the collection. You can do that through the Teach the Earth website, contribute an activity or contribute an entire course. So we would love to be able to highlight things that the community is already doing and help to share those more broadly. And then lastly, if this is something that you're excited about thinking about, if you want to work with colleagues in your program to think about workforce readiness and maybe some adjustments that you might make to what you're doing, NAGT offers customized workshops, both in person and virtual, through the Traveling Workshops program. There's a QR code that will get you to that website here. Likely this is something Anne and I would help to lead for your program if you are interested in kind of doing more of a deep dive. And that's it. I had some discussion questions here, but I think I'll stop and see what questions have popped up from all of you. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Viskupic, for sharing that fabulous talk with us. We have had a few questions come in, but I would just encourage folks in our live audience, if you do have a question, please go ahead and enter that in the Q&A box, and I'll go ahead and read that aloud for our presenter to respond to. There are a few questions here. One came in that was asking about if you would be able to provide information on resources or opportunities that are available for international undergraduate and graduate students, as well as how new government policies could affect the opportunities available to international geoscientists. Kind of a big question, so
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't know
think
if
I
you.
want to say anything about new government policies. Um, I think I'll
Fair.
leave that alone. Um, so all the work that I've done has been on looking at the US workforce, so advertisements for jobs within the US. So certainly for international students who are interested in staying in the US and getting a job here, I think all of the things that I've talked about are directly applicable. I think um, opportunities and the skills needed within the US are covered here, no matter what your background is. For students who are interested in being employed in different countries, that's not something that I have explored at all. So what does the job market look like in other countries and what skills might be needed there? I imagine that there's a lot of overlap with what skills are described by US employers, but I haven't done research in that area.
Okay. Uh, Shelley Olds writes in with a question, during your research and searches, what resources, activities, or guides have you come across for secondary level students, so middle and high school students?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the career profiles that are available on the web um, would also be useful for high school students to start thinking about. A lot of high school students don't have exposure to geosciences. It's not a field they're unlikely to know a geoscientist or maybe think about that as a career. So using some of those career profiles might be a great way to get students to start thinking about, well, what does it mean to be a geoscientist? What types of things do they do?
Mhm. I might interject there because I one of the questions I had written down kind of plays off that, and that is trying to get an appreciation for what priors do students come in with regards to geoscience. And I've heard this described particularly uh, tricky within the realm of geophysics because a lot of students, to them, they just associate that with oil and gas development or something, and may have negative connotations and therefore think that whole discipline is not something for them. Do you have any insight or data on sort of student priors and where and how to challenge those?
Yeah, so I do have data from the career planning class that I developed and taught, and that came out of an STEM grant at Boise State. And so I collaborated with a colleague in the College of Education here who ran some focus groups with students at the end of that course. And what you're saying is exactly what comes out of
Oh,
some of that focus group discussion, that students at the start, so before this kind of focused intervention on thinking about what careers are available in the geosciences, students know about mining and they know about oil and gas, and many of them are maybe not excited about those fields or don't really understand. They might be not excited, but they also might not understand what goes on
sure,
in those fields. And so, purposefully having students explore what jobs are available, whether through career profiles or even asking them to look for job advertisements. Find some job advertisements for jobs that look interesting to you. Um, what kind of industries are they in? What kinds of skills are those employers asking for? Is a
Mhm.
way to help students see the variety of things that are out there.
Okay. A question here. In your opinion, how impactful are internships and other research experiences in preparing students for a geophysics pathway?
Um, so I'm not a geophysicist, so I don't want to say anything specifically about a geophysics pathway, but I would say that that there's a lot of research that says that internships, research experiences, those are really high impact practices. And so those are places where students are gaining a lot of, you can connect to a lot of the skills that we talked about here. So planning, data analysis, communication, um, record keeping, all of those things might be part of a research experience. Making sure that students recognize that they're gaining those skills as part of the internship or research experience, I think is really important. So that's something that if you're supervising students in those types of experiences, um, like talk about those things, have students reflect on the skills that they're gaining, maybe towards the end of their internship or research experience, sit down and help them to update their resume. So what is this going to look like on your resume? What are you going to say
Mhm.
about it? Um, um, I think is a great way to think about that.
Sure. There's a question here that's come in again with an international perspective, but I think it speaks to some of the questions I've been seeing in the chat, and then also some of the things that you talked about. It says, thanks a lot for this amazing presentation. Our university started a new geophysics program, and I see that my students are a bit lost when thinking about their future. Regarding the career workshop you talked about during your presentation, is it possible that one of these workshops could be planned for universities outside of the United States?
Um, sure. Yeah, well, I mean, why not? Again, I don't have data that would specifically be about the job market in another country, but thinking about what it means to work in this field, what skills are needed in general, I sure, absolutely. I don't see why not.
Okay. There's a question next about career transitions. How do you address career transitions and the boom bust nature of certain geoscience industries in your coursework?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that happens early on in my career planning course is that students do a lot of thinking about their own values with respect to a career, right? So is job security something that's really important to you? Is it important to you to work on projects long term, or do you like doing something different all the time? Do you like working as part of a team, right? So what are the things that, what are the working conditions or the things that you would value in a career? And so working in an industry where there is a boom bust cycle is not going to be appealing to some students.
Mhm.
And for other students, that's just fine. They might find that pretty exciting to work in something for a few years and then move on and do something else. So we try to talk about that explicitly as part of the course.
Excellent. I think that's a smart approach in terms of different people are going to respond differently to situations, and so it sort of depends on the individual and how they approach that. So okay, well, I think that's just about all of the questions that I had seen come in, and so maybe maybe unless there were any final last minute ones that people want to send in, but um, barring that, I would just say again to Dr. Viskupic, thank you so much for sharing your research and your results with us today. It's really, really fascinating work, and it seems like it's going a long way to helping students along that path that's going to lead them to a geoscience career. So really exciting stuff. Let's see here. Uh, Maybe one comment that just came in. So this individual says, speaking from the UK and from the perspective of entries to a master's level program, I'd say that most of our UK European students have largely pivoted away from hydrocarbons. Um, International students less so, but not exclusively. So yeah, it's interesting, and I guess maybe a question that raises in my mind that I don't know that I've seen come up yet ties back to kind of environmental efforts, or the way that there's been a lot of boom in like green energy, green industries, that sort of a thing. Um, it seems like that would be either a common focus or maybe a common theme that students might come in and ask about when thinking about careers, is how they can sort of align that, particularly if, as you say, students are asked to think about their values and whatnot when considering their future career paths.
Yeah, so if we go back to that blue pie chart early in the slides, most of the jobs are not in hydrocarbons, right? In oil and gas at the bachelor's level. That's a very tiny wedge of that pie, and a lot of the jobs are in things like environmental services. Um, and so, right, so the things that students are coming in interested in doing, there are jobs available for them in those fields, is what I would say.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. Dr. Viskupic, thank you again so much for sharing with us today. And if any of you have additional questions, or maybe we didn't quite cover what you're hoping to ask about, I would encourage you to please reach out to either Dr. Viskupic directly or to Erscope, and we can put you in touch so that if there are continuing conversations or questions, those can be answered. So thank you, thank you, Dr. Viskupic, and thank you everybody for tuning in today.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.